Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this cheerful Saturday. There's an old saying, it takes a village to raise a child. Unfortunately, in this pandemic, we all are confined to our homes, away from family, plus the entire nuclear setup makes it very difficult to manage children. A lot of questions, a lot of queries. Through this entire lockdown and presently the unlock 4 that's on, Rainbow Children's Hospital has been there with all of you. Our OPDs have been running from morning till night, even on Sundays as well. We are on doing our deliveries, taking care of all the babies, doing vaccinations. We've started a lot of community outreach programs, such as these webinars, which are happening every Saturday and Sunday, and also the home vaccinations. And we thought, what better topic to speak to all of you than answering queries on raising children. So I have with me today Dr. Prakash Vemgal. He is our clinical director and HOD, pediatrics at Banagatta Road. Good morning, doctor.
Good morning. Good morning, Girija. Thank you.
And we also have Dr. Rashmi Adiga, consultant, pediatric neurology and general pediatrics at Rainbow Children's Hospital, Banagatta Road. Good morning, Dr. Rashmi.
Good morning, everyone. I think one of the nice things about this pandemic is that it has involved all of us to get in touch with you so easily over the net. So welcome, everyone, and good morning.
I'm going to start off with a small brief of our two experts today. Dr. Prakash Vemgal, he's a specialist in the area of neonatology, pediatric critical care, and general pediatrics. It was his love for children that motivated him to pursue a career in pediatrics. He has studied extensively in UK, Australia, Canada, and he has diligently published various articles in medical journals. In his illustrious career, he has actually treated extremely low weight premature babies, complex sick children, and children, of course, with various infections. And speaking of Dr. Rashmi Adiga, she is a consultant pediatric neurologist. Before joining Rainbow, ma'am has actually had over 14 years of experience at working in the UK. She has worked with children managing seizures, complex and simple epilepsies, with children with neuromuscular disorders, cerebral palsy, developmental delays, autistic spectrum disorders, and various things. And it's her passion for teaching that she's also currently a faculty for British Pediatric Neurology Association for their pediatric epilepsy training courses and their EEG basics and workshops. And she is currently a member of the Pediatric Neurology and the International Child Neurology Association. So welcome, doctors, again. I will be taking your questions in the questions poll, and other than that, also we've had some questions with parents have been asking us throughout, and we'll begin now. So the first question for Dr. Prakash: what is the normal weight of a child, and the daughter is overweight? So what can the parent do?
So thank you, Girija. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you. So the definition of normal weight depends on the age of a child. So how we measure normal weight is by plotting the child's age, plotting the child's weight on a particular age on a growth chart. So we have a standard growth chart, and we basically, if you see your vaccination card or your hospital book, which we give it when the baby is born, there's a weight chart and as well as the height chart. So we measure the weight of the child in, and in respective to the age, and if it is on the 50th centile, so there's a graph, nice graph. So if it is on the 50th centile, we know that okay, the child is average for that age. So just to give you an example, if a 2 years old child weighs around 12 to 13 kgs, it's in the 50th centile. So at the same time, if the child is below the third centile, that is below the graph, it is underweight, and above that graph, which is above 97th centile, it is called overweight. So the next question is overweight. So we need to really check your child's weight on the age bar and see is your child overweight or is it is obesity, or whether it is just above the 50th centile. So what we can do, we need to assess the nutritional part of it as well as any other medical cause to see whether the overweight is secondary to any other medical cause. So I would strongly recommend to get once checked with your pediatrician and then take it forward.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. And I have a question from a parent. I'm not going to say out loud the parent's name just for the sake of privacy. So we have a parent here who's asking Dr. Rashmi if you could take this question. Is there any specific food items that we can include to increase the immunity for children?
To increase the immunity for children. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I would probably say that it's important to have a healthy diet. And a healthy diet involves adequate amounts of carbohydrate, protein, and fat. So, and lots of fruits and vegetables. So it is said that everybody should have at least 5 portions of fruits and vegetables. And if you're thinking about immunity, it's always better to have seasonal fruits and seasonal vegetables. So as you know, the season now is the citrus fruits. So you can have the citrus fruits now, which can also, increase your natural vitamin C and improve the immunity. But it's better not to be too much focused on it. As long as you have a healthy diet, which has adequate amount of carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and also has lots of fruits, vegetables, fiber, you will be safe. You don't need to have anything special as such for children.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rashmi. Dr. Prakash, I would like to you to answer the next question. The parent here has not mentioned how old is the child, but they're asking, what if a mother is COVID positive? Can she feed the child or not?
So yeah, definitely breastfeeding is recommended to continue. What is important is if the mother is COVID positive, it's important that she takes the proper precautions in terms of washing her hands, wearing a mask, and feeding the child in a barrier where she doesn't transmit this infection. So the current recommendation is not to stop breastfeeding unless until the mother is very sick where she can't cope with breastfeeding. Then yeah, it is advised to give other alternative. But if the mother is still concerned, she can always express the breast milk in a right way, taking proper precautions. So, and then we can give the express breast milk to the baby by their family members. So there's no, we don't say that don't breastfeed if mother is COVID positive.
Okay. And sir, I have a direct question for you from a parent. He's asking, Dr. Prakash, sir, I have a 21-month-old baby. Can we delay the vaccination as we are not in Bangalore and also afraid to go out to the hospital during this pandemic? How long can it be delayed?
So if I'm right, 21 months, we don't have any vaccination schedule. The last vaccination your child would have had is at 18 months, which is a booster of DPT and hepatitis A. If that is being done, the next vaccination due for your child is at 2 years. So 2 years we give typhoid. And we know that typhoid, even if you don't give it at 2 years, it's not a problem. But there may be a possibility your child would have had a typhoid at 1 year. If it is given at 1 year, then definitely you don't need the second dose of typhoid vaccination at 2 years, if it is a conjugate typhoid vaccination. What is important is if your child didn't had a primary first booster, it is important to get it done, mainly because to build up the immunity of this vaccination related illness. So definitely, you can postpone for a month or two, but if it is less than a year and the primary vaccinations are not there, especially if the baby is born, if it is 6 weeks, 10 weeks, and 14 weeks vaccination, kindly don't miss that, because that can cause more problems if your baby get into some of these infections.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Dr. Rashmi, I'm going to club a couple of questions for you which are quite similar. All related to growth and development. One parent is asking how soon, please get back to that, how to increase the height of a girl child after puberty. So this is a question. If you could please answer this question.
Okay, see, height and of a children is usually determined by how tall the parents are. So as long as you're giving healthy food and they're exercising to their maximal capacity, then they will attain their height, whatever it might be. And in fact, girls grow until I mean, girls and boys, they grow until their bones are fused. So that's when they grow. And in fact, girls grow until they're 18 years old. So please don't worry if your girl's height, as long as it's tracking along the line in the growth chart, which Dr. Prakash had mentioned earlier, it's nothing to worry about, and she will attain her height, whatever it might be. If her height has always been short, if she's less than the fifth centile on the height chart and she's not tracking along, then please do come and see us, because then we will have to look into it and see whether she needs anything more than that. But if it's a simple thing of, you know, you want her to be very tall and all that, she will attain her height, and you don't need to worry too much about that.
Okay, so I'm going to club the questions now. This is all on vitamins and vaccinations again. So they just want to know, is there any vitamin a kid can have during COVID? And is flu shot going to prevent the risk of the COVID infection? And when and if the flu shot is up, I mean, the COVID vaccine is available, is it going to be safe to take?
Okay, so I'll start off with the last question. Flu shot will not prevent COVID infection, because flu shot is made with the normal flu viruses which are occurring in every year. So every year the flu vaccine is redesigned to care for the flu viruses which would occur in that particular year. So COVID vaccine is entirely different. It's currently under trials. So very soon we should have the results of the trial and say how safe it is. In fact, one of my very close friends, who is also a pediatric neurologist in Cambridge, she's volunteered for the trial in Oxford, and we are hoping that we will start trialing the vaccine, Oxford vaccine, very soon in India as well. Once we get the COVID vaccine, then we can try it. Then we can, you know, give it to the child separately. Getting to the next question about vitamins, generally healthy growing children who are exposed to adequate sunlight and who do adequate exercise, have a good balanced diet, do not need any additional vitamins. However, because of the COVID, most of us, because of the lockdown, are staying indoors. So we are not getting exposure to sunlight. So if that is the case, then a small dose of vitamin D, what you say, the maintenance dose of vitamin D will be useful. But if you're getting exposure to sunlight, in fact, I was just looking at the recent research with vitamin D. They say that even 5 minutes of sunlight 6 times a week is enough to give you a maintenance dose of vitamin D. But if you're in lockdown and you're not going out anywhere and you're not exposed to sunlight, then it's better to take a maintenance dose of vitamin D. Does that answer your questions?
Definitely. I'm sure they would ask more in case there's still some queries around this.
Yeah.
Dr. Prakash, I have a
Yep.
parent here who's asking, kid is 6 years old. Unfortunately, the result has come positive for COVID. How to
Yep.
proceed further after having the result in hand?
Well, if the child is stable, the definition of stable means if the baby is not having major fevers like high temperatures, baby is active, sleeping well, eating well, playing well, doesn't have any tiredness, doesn't have any oxygen requirement. Oxygen requirement means you will get a device to check the oxygen level in the blood. If the oxygen level in the blood is anything more than 94, 96, and the child is breathing well, then you don't need to be worried. We know that more than 70% of the patients who have been affected are kind of having mild symptoms or no symptoms at all. So what the directory of government is doing is basically if the patient is or a child is asymptomatic, they can stay at home, have normal food, normal activity, and just quarantine yourself for 14 days. And that is most important. And also there's something which has come out is you don't need to recheck if you're doing well. So before a couple of months back, we were rechecking the COVID test after 7 to 10 days, but there's no need to do that. So it's fine. You can stay at home and have a normal life, and don't try to give this infection to others by just going out of the house. But there are other people who are negative. You need to make provision that they don't come in contact or probably move to a different location where they are not exposed.
Okay, one more question for Dr. Prakash, rather two, again more COVID related only. One is what is the risk of infection for a child for COVID? How likely they are able to catch COVID? And the second question is 18th-month girl things like has symptoms like viral fever for the parents, and how can we isolate with the baby, which is not possible right now?
The second question is a COVID positive patient or just a common flu?
Parents are having viral fever and they
Okay.
want to, they've not mentioned whether it's COVID or not.
Okay, so answering the first question is, the first question was in terms of how to prevent the infection, right? If I'm right.
How likely a child can catch COVID infection?
Okay, right. So the chances of any child or any adult, it's the same incidence in terms of, a child can get an infection as same as the adult can get infection. The reason is because this virus is a novel virus. It means that it's a new virus. We are not immune to this virus. So the adults and as well as the child, we are not immune to this virus. So we'll definitely get into some sort of infection. Now, how each one's body reacts to a particular new virus varies from person to person and child to child. So, yeah, a child or an adult can get infection provided they're exposed, and it also depends on the viral load. How much is the viral load each person can acquire? That we can measure by doing some of the tests. But looking at any other person or patient who have COVID, we can't say that, okay, I might get it or might not get it. It may be less viral load or more viral load. Answering to that second question, if the parents have common symptoms of flu-like illness, the basic precautions are basically the same as what we do for COVID. So wash your hands when you sneeze and cough with soap water quite frequently, wear a mask, and the rest of the precautions are, don't kiss the child, don't be, hugging the child, wear wash clothes if in case if you are contaminated, and the rest of the things are the routine things like taking care of a child. So if it is a common flu, you don't need to be worried because the immunity might be there for the adults as well as for the children. But if it is a COVID thing, you need to be a little bit extra cautious about that.
Okay, thank you, doctor. I have a question for Dr. Rashmi, which parents have been asking us. What is the normal pattern for teeth growth, and how to manage in case the child is getting cavities?
Okay. So normally, we normally say that the first teeth which come are your incisors, and they come around between the ages of 6 to 9 months, the front incisors, the top and the bottom incisors. And this is followed by the other teeth at 13 to 14 months. However, not all children, follow the same trajectory, and some children might get it earlier. Some children might be a little bit late with this. With respect to cavities, it's very important to start brushing your child's teeth as soon as the teeth come out, and make sure that you don't give any sugary drinks in a bottle or lots of sugary foods which you're not brushing off at the end of the day, and all these things. If you have any doubts that your child might be getting cavities, or if you feel that your teeth is not following the normal pattern, or there is some variation in the teeth, or they're not misshapen or anything like that, then please do come and see us. We do have a dental service within our hospital. Dr. Prabhavati runs the service here and her team. So please do come and see us if you have any doubts about any of that.
Okay, so I would also like to add that we do have a video consulting facility available, wherein any parent can actually avail and see the doctor over a video, be it on our Microsoft Teams or WhatsApp or anything, and that way you can actually consult the doctor and then and depending on the need, you could always come down to the hospital. Dr. Rashmi, I have another question for you. Can a developmental delay baby, can this kind of a baby be normal?
Okay. Have they mentioned the age of the baby?
They have not mentioned the age, and they've not even mentioned what is the development delay that is there as well. They've just said if
Okay.
a developmental baby can be normal.
Okay, so when we think about child development, we look into 4 domains of development. So we look at gross motor skills, which is like sitting up, walking, running, climbing stairs, jumping, and all this. Then you can have the fine motor skills where they use their hands to do things, starting off with pincer grasp, building towers, handwriting skills as they grow older, and all that. Then you have the speech and language skills where they learn how to talk words, form sentences, understand instructions from parents, and then the social skills where there is eye-to-eye contact, and they learn how to engage with people, enjoy other people's company, how to communicate, and all these things. So we think about the growth and development in these 4 skill domains. Now, sometimes it can so happen that some of the development may be delayed because, because the parents are probably, not knowing exactly how to deal with a child's development. For example, we see a lot of children who have delay in their gross motor development because parents are so scared to put them down on the floor. So they're not able to crawl or they're not able to walk or anything like that. See, these sort of things, if there's no other problems in the child, if we see the child and we examine and there are no other problems, these sort of things can be easily fixed with a few physiotherapy sessions. The child can become completely normal. And so with the speech and language and cognitive delay. The speech and language and cognitive delay, there is a lot of speech and language and cognitive delay these days, especially because parents think that showing screen time is very good for their children. So I would strongly advise against showing any kind of screen time for children less than 2 years of age. So if the screen time could include anything, mobile phone, television, computers, and all that. So because of that, we see speech delay and cognition delay. So if it is secondary to this, then with stopping the screen time, doing adequate therapy sessions, we can bring the child back to their normal trajectory of development. Otherwise, we will have to look into the causes of developmental delay. What kind of cause is causing the developmental delay? Whether there's a neurological cause for this, whether there's a muscular cause for this, and then we can predict on how we can, get the best outcome for these children, and whether we can, bring them to normal or near normal and all that. Okay, does that sort of answer the question? The question is a bit vague, so
yes, it was definitely a little bit vague, but I'm sure it has answered most of the queries around the developmental issues. And like I would like to even tell the parent that you can always come down and book a consultation with us, maybe through video as well, wherein doctor can assess your child and kind of actually do some help which is required for the child based on its condition. Dr. Prakash, over to you now. How can I stop my child from bedwetting? My daughter is 4 years old.
So this question we can answer in 2 bits. See, what I can say is if your child is 4 years and it's bedwetting and has not developed, going to the toilet before, so it's important that most of the kids, are toilet trained by 2 to 3 years. Majority of them would be trained by 3 years, but a few percentage of children would probably extend that 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. So if it is only nighttime bedwetting, I would probably advise you to kind of make sure that these children are, taken to the toilet before they sleep. And you probably can avoid giving all the sugary juices or aerated drinks to these children before sleep. It's important that there's no liquid given after 7 or 8 o'clock in the night. And you probably also can plan to, if you know that exact time when the child would probably bedwet in the night, probably keep an alarm, wake up the child and take her to toilet. That is one part of the method how you can prevent or train your child from bedwetting. The second thing is you probably also can train the child to have increased bladder capacity by giving a lot of water during daytime and hold the urine till the bladder is full. So by this you're training the baby's child's bladder so that it has maximum capacity and the urge of passing urine is kind of tolerated well. So by doing this, it's important that at the same time you can you don't need to insist the child or threaten the child if it bedwets. Then it can be a fear itself which might cause the child to bedwet. Another thing is if the child is old enough or it is a new onset of bedwetting, we need to do some test. One of the common things is urinary tract infection, which can lead to bedwetting in a dry child. So it's important to get the urine checked. And there are some children who would bedwet even at 8 years, 10 years, 12 years. So we need to evaluate, is there anything underlying? And this requires a kind of a consultation with the pediatrician, as well as if required, a neurologist would look into it. So common remedies are what I told you before. And in case if it is out of control and we have ruled out there's no way we can stop bedwetting, there are some medications which can be given, but that has to be supervised and given.
Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Rashmi, how can a parent ensure mental health of a 2 years old child? And right now the kid is mostly indoors.
Okay. So, mental health of a 2-year-old child, yeah. So I think it is very important that parents use this time to spend as much time with the children. So 2-year-old children often want their parents' attention, and they cannot differentiate between positive attention and negative attention. So if you find that your child is doing something which you disapprove of and you shout at the child, then the child will take that as attention anyway and will keep doing that. So you need to be aware that children like attention. So try to give them as much as positive attention as you can. Try and spend as much time as you can with the child. And try and look into what all things you can do at home with the child. So with respect, the child should be able to have a safe place where they are able to move around. Try and get these toys, these blocks toys and all that, which you can make into shapes and things like that, which can improve the child's imagination and all that. At 2 years, they should be able to hold a pen or a crayon and be able to scribble, have colors, different bright colors, which they should be able to do as well. And try and engage them in eye-to-eye contact and trying to talk to the child. So every family member should try to have eye-to-eye contact with the child and try and talk to the child and engage with them, and make sure that they have a good routine at home. So 2 years old, they need to have a very clear routine of when they have breakfast, what time there is lunch, what time there is a mid-morning snack, what time there's an evening snack, and what time they sleep at night. So they have a very good routine in spite of having the lockdown, I think, and this will ensure the best possible mental health for your child.
Okay, that's nice to know. Dr. Prakash, a parent here is asking, how much can we delay vaccination for a 1-year-old baby?
So 1-year-old child probably will have you would have finished 9 months vaccination. That is the most important thing. It's a MMR vaccination, which is given for the first time. So kindly get 9 months vaccination. If you have done 9 months, then the next vaccination is typhoid and hepatitis A. So if you look at both typhoid and hepatitis A, they are waterborne infections. If you are at home and having quite a good hygiene, you're eating warm food and you're drinking quite purified water or RO water, and which is boiled and kept to room temperature, you're pretty safe that your child might not get typhoid or hepatitis A. So this vaccination can be postponed for a couple of months, not a problem. But what is more important is if you have not vaccinated for MMR, chickenpox, and other primary vaccination like DPT, HIP, hepatitis B, and the pneumococcal vaccination, these are the important vaccination which has to be given before 1 year.
Okay, thank you, doctor. And I have one more vaccination related question itself for you. Parent is asking, sir, would you recommend flu vaccination during this pandemic? Is it safe?
Yes, we strongly recommend flu vaccination for all, even children and adults, because we are heading to flu season in the next couple of months. So we know that by giving flu vaccination, you at least can prevent the common flus. There's nothing to get worried about COVID part of it because it's entirely different virus. So it's safe. And we also have started home vaccination for the last couple of months. So we are more than happy to come and vaccinate your kids as well as adults if they want flu vaccination.
Okay. That's great. So we do have, like how sir mentioned, we do have started the home vaccination service. This is more of an outreach for us so that we want to be during here for you for the welfare of your children. So in case you're not able to come to the hospital, we are happy to come home and do the vaccination for the child. A doctor, a nurse will come with appropriate PPE. They would do the vaccinations, give instructions on post-vaccination care. And as always, you can always come over in case any emergency signs and symptoms are there. Dr. Rashmi, I've got 2 questions on masks. So both the parents are asking, wearing a mask is causing more headache, but at the same time, you have to take care of the baby as well. So what are your recommendations around masks for a baby?
Okay, so this is a very good question, and it's an interesting question, and it has been debated extensively, especially within all the countries, RCPCH and everywhere. So the UK guidelines say that less than 2 years of age, you don't necessarily need to wear a mask, because if you put the mask for the baby, then the baby might get a little bit, what do you say, might find it difficult to breathe. So they might, snuffle under it. So less than 2 years of age, you need not compulsorily consider wearing a mask for your baby. But more than 2 years of age, you should be able to wear a mask. But obviously 5 and 6-year-olds also don't like wearing a mask. So it is difficult. So in fact, they have relaxed their guidelines and said less than 8 years of age, you don't wear it. But I would say that less than 2 years of age, don't wear a mask. But after the age of 2 years, try and get some colorful masks, which, you try and teach the child itself to take responsibility for wearing the mask. So I often find in my clinic, the children as young as 4 or 5 years, they tell their parents off, "Dad, your mask is falling off," and you're talking to the doctor, and the dad has to pull it up. So try and get your children to take responsibility for it, and you'll find that there'll be a huge difference, and they will only start wearing it, and they'll start scolding you if you are not wearing it. Okay.
That's definitely true.
Yeah.
Dr. Prakash,
Yeah.
one simple question for you on consulting over a video. How good or bad it is and how useful it is.
As most of the parents are aware that we have started doing video consultation, and most of the doctors around the world are doing video consultation. So it's very important to get into video consultation whenever you have some queries regarding the child's health. Some of the common medications or medical conditions, we can probably look in a video consultation and advise you. At the same time, if there's some issues which is beyond video consultation, we'll definitely guide you. What is important is if it is simple cold cough and we think that it's a viral infection, otherwise the child is doing well. So most of the time we can probably sort it out by just looking at the child on a video, how the child is doing, and prescribe you common medication. And having said that, it is very important if your child doesn't recover in the next 2 to 3 days and the fever is very high, it's not doing well, you need to kindly come to the hospital. We may have to do some blood and urine test or an x-ray to see what is going through your child. So it is quite fine to have a video consultation. There may be some common issues in terms of feeding or other vaccination related or any of those simple questions where we can answer through video. So kindly make use of these facilities because it's a good way of getting in touch with your local doctors.
Dr. Rashmi, would you like to add on this? Because I know that you have a lot of requests for video consultations.
Yeah, yes, I think in my specialty, where I do pediatric neurology and especially at my epilepsy practice, it is very easy to do video consultations. So I am doing video consultations since the pandemic started for children who are not actually living in Bangalore. They're living all over the country, and I'm doing video consultations with them. So because we are able to adjust the medicines quite easily, we are able to, give tips for the parents to manage their child's epilepsy and all that over the video. So they don't necessarily need to come into hospital. And I have also talked to my previous colleagues in England, Cambridge, who are also doing only video consultations for pediatric neurology consultations in view of the pandemic. Now, there are certain situations, and in fact, I would probably say a very few, the last 3 or 4 months, maybe about 2 or 3 situations where I have asked the parents to bring the child in, especially if they've needed an EEG, if they've needed some change in medications and all that. But most of the time with pediatric neurology consultations, we are able to do video consultations and advise you whatever you need for your child, developmental problems and all of that. So most of it, we are able to do it on video consultations. And there are guidelines released as well, especially with respect to epilepsy care by the BPNA, British Pediatric Neurology Association, Indian Telehealth Association and all that, which have very clear ways in which we follow these guidelines, and we are very clear about what we can and what we cannot do. So if you are in any doubt and you don't want to come into hospital, please, we are here for you, and please do book a video consultation and we are there for you.
Okay, thank you both of you. Dr. Rashmi, I have one question for you, again on growth and development. Son is very shy and doesn't make eye contact. How can he overcome this? This is actually a 4-year-old child who had asked this question. I mean,
Okay.
a parent.
Okay, so this is a good question. So children also have temperaments, just like adults. So some children might be very active, some children might get angry very quickly, some children might be, very friendly, extroverted, and some children might be introverted. So children have temperaments as well. So if your son is just shy and introverted, then you try and see what kind of situations he's shy in and see how he can overcome that. Try and get your friends or your relatives and all that to talk to him and see get him used to meeting people and all that. However, there are also certain conditions in which children may not have adequate social skills. So if your son or any other child has a delay in speech and language development and has a delay in social skills development, and then you're thinking it's shy, then they need to be assessed and evaluated. But if it's just being shy and he's well in all other aspects of his development, then you can watch and wait and try and encourage him to meet people and all that. Okay.
Dr. Prakash, a parent here is asking that they have a 6-month-old baby and she's feeding her formula as the mother has less breast milk and now has started giving her Cerelac rice. So what other foods can be started now and at what frequency?
So since your child is 6 months now, so you can start all the cereals. Basically, we have 4 cereals which we would advise. One is rice, ragi, suji, and wheat. So you can make it as a puree and start feeding this. And generally, we advise 4 servings in a day. So breakfast, lunch, evening, something to eat or drink, and dinner. In between, you can give either your milk if you secrete milk, or if you don't have any options, we advise to have formula milk. We generally don't, it is important that you remember that we don't give cow's milk till 1 year of age, because some kids can develop cow's protein intolerance. So along with the cereals, we ask the parents to add any type of dal, whatever they make at home. And you can mix dal with rice, ragi with rice, and some of these cereals can also be sprouted and finely crushed and prepared at home. It adds on to the nutritional value of that particular cereal. Along with dal, you can also introduce common vegetables. The common vegetables can be cooked and blended and made it as a soup or as a kind of a paste and given to the child. Along with that, you can introduce some of the seasonal fruits, and all fruits can be given. We strongly recommend fruit with fiber. Don't give fruit juices. Fruit juices are advised after 8 to 9 months. So all the cereals, dals, vegetables, and fruits can be introduced one by one. When a child is around 8 to 9 months, it is probably going to have whatever food you make at home. So this is what I am advising you is the home food what you can prepare and give it to the child. When you're traveling or when you don't have, you are not able to cook food for the baby, then you can use some of the Cerelac or commercial products, because these products, once the tin is opened, you need to finish it fast, and they're all processed food. So I strongly don't recommend that as the regular food. But during traveling, or if you have any difficulties in preparing food at home, you can use it once in a while. If you are starting non-vegetarian for your child, generally we recommend after 8 to 9 months, you can start with any fish, chicken or meat in a minced way. Egg white can't be given till 1 year. So this is what I would recommend, but don't go into any food charts saying that, okay, this food chart gives all these 10 things I need to give to the child. Probably you will not be successful. As adults, we can't follow most of the fruit charts unless until you are very sure that you can follow. And how can a child can follow that, what you make it at home? So go with the flow. Make sure that, as Rashmi initially said, that give adequate carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. Fruits and vegetables will add on to vitamins and minerals.
Okay. And continuing on that to Dr. Rashmi, I have a parent here asking how good are these Pediasures and Horlicks, especially for an hyperactive 3.5-year-old, and also how can they identify whichever food that they're taking is adequate for their growth for a 3-year-old.
Okay. So personally, I would not recommend Pediasure or Horlicks for somebody who is, growing and developing normally and who is getting a very balanced diet with fruits, vegetables, and all that. Pediasure I often use in children who have neurodevelopmental problems or not able to get their nutrition and all of those things. So if your child is growing and developing normally and you're having an adequate local diet can also be very balanced diet with adequate amount of carbohydrate, protein, fat, and fruits, vegetables, fiber, and all that. I wouldn't recommend any additional Pediasure or Horlicks or anything like that. With respect to hyperactivity, I'm often asked this question by parents: why is my child very hyperactive? We often find that sugary foods can trigger hyperactivity, and also processed foods in which you have E numbers or preservatives and things like that can trigger hyperactivity. So you might consider, reducing the amount of sugar you give in the diet, and also trying to omit some of the processed foods you give with the E numbers, and you might feel that the hyperactivity would be better with that. Does that answer the question? I think there was one more question with that. Was there, or
was it that what are the balanced foods that a child needs to have?
Balanced food, yeah. So you need to have a balanced diet. So at the age of 3.5, he should be eating whatever you are eating, though the quantity might be less. So whatever the parents eat, he should have the same diet. So whichever part of India you're in, you have your local cuisine, and that local cuisine usually will include, carbohydrates, protein, and fat. For example, if you take South Indians, they have idli with chutney and sambar. So idli has your carbohydrates, it has urad dal, so it has your protein. The chutney usually has coconut in it, so it gives you the medium chain triglycerides, and it gives you the dal as well in the chutney. And the sambar will have vegetables in it and dal as well, which will give you the protein. So your local cuisine, if you follow it correctly, usually gives you the balanced diet and gives you all what you need. And in fact, idli, sambar, and chutney is considered the breakfast of the world, I think, because it's considered the best breakfast. It's so has everything in it. But if you think about every breakfast that way, and you can think about what you have in that breakfast, you will be able to give a balanced diet for your child. So you don't need to give any fancy food or anything like that. You just stick to whatever you do locally. If you're North Indian, you have parathas and things like that. You stick to what you do locally. Just think about all the things which need to be there in your diet, and you'll find it will be very balanced. Okay.
So idli, by the way, can be very fancy if it is called as steamed rice dumplings.
Yeah.
Well, Rashmi missed out Uddin Vada, so she can add Uddin Vada.
Yeah. Steamed rice dumpling. Yeah.
Sir, I have multiple parents asking me on exposure to sunlight. So there are different age groups of parents. One is a 3-month-old child, another is a toddler, and the toddler parent is also asking, is it this amount of light exposure same for kids and adults, or is it different? How long should they be in the sun every day?
Okay.
So that's for me.
For you, or yeah.
Okay.
No, getting to the vitamin D thing, which is exposure to sunlight, because it's a sunshine vitamin as it's called. So what they have done is, this research comes from our own AIIMS in New Delhi, and what he says is that if you expose 40% of the body for 5 minutes a day, only 5 minutes a day for 6 days a week, you get enough vitamin D levels. So it's not a lot of exposure at all. So you don't need to worry about your child tanning or sunscreens and all that. It's only 5 minutes. And if you think about early morning sunlight rather than the noon sunlight, then you'll find it's less damaging to the skin as well. So early morning sunlight, 5 minutes a day should be more than enough to give adequate levels of vitamin D.
Okay. And Dr. Prakash,
Yeah.
here is a parent who's saying that the neighbor kids, who is a 3-year-old, had recently got corona and is now recovered. Is it okay to allow their child now to play with this recovered child, or is there any chances of recurrence?
Well, if the child has recovered completely and it is more than 2 to 3 weeks and child is asymptomatic, definitely the child can play with any other children. But having said that, if the child is playing with that child and there are other children, and if the child, their children get corona, it is not, we can't prove that it has come from that child. So it might be from some other child or some other adult. So it is always important at this pandemic season situation. It's probably better to avoid playing in group of a lot of children along with adults. So it is okay if you are playing within the house with 1 or 2 child and you're pretty sure that there's no corona in their family.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. I have a parent now asking, I think multiple parents asking if the vaccination can be postponed.
You're asking me?
Vaccination, multiple parents asking if vaccination can be postponed, and the children here are anywhere between the age 6 months to 4.5 years old.
Okay, so 6.5 to 4.5 years. So what we know is, as I before mentioned about, postponement of vaccination, it is very important that we need to vaccinate if a child is less than 1 year. All the primary vaccinations has to be done. If the child has done all the basic vaccination, and if it is more than 2 years, so probably there's not much of vaccination left between 2 years to 4.5 years. So if you have done the typhoid vaccination at 2 years, the next optional vaccination is at around 4.5 years, which is again chickenpox and MMR. So yeah, if it is a child is above 2 years, probably you can wait and see the child can come back and get the vaccination done. But if it is less than 1 year, it is important to get the vaccination done. And I would like to re-emphasize that we have started a couple of months back the home vaccination program. So you can kindly contact us. We'll see what vaccination is due and we can order those vaccinations and we will come to your house and give the vaccination to your children.
Okay. Dr. Rashmi, another parent here is asking how effectively we can manage a 3.5-year-old boy who is autistic and is away from the parents. He is currently with grandparents and happy with the environment at hometown. They're worried about traveling to Bangalore right now.
Okay. So I think, yeah, if he's happy with his grandparents and he's all right there, I think he should be okay. You don't necessarily need to bring him to Bangalore or anything like that. But obviously, if you want to bring him to Bangalore also, I think Bangalore coronavirus is rising. But as you have seen the news, the virulence is very less, in the sense everybody is getting very infections and they're recovering very quickly from the infections. And the death rate in Bangalore is also much, much lower than that of developed countries. So even if you want to bring him to Bangalore also, that is also okay. It shouldn't really be a problem. But if he's happy with his grandparents, that should also be all right. Yeah.
For Dr. Prakash, my son is 7 years old, has not been outdoors and has not been exposed to any outsiders as well. He has, since the time of the outbreak has happened, and he has a congenital cardiac condition. Now, we, the parents, also keep our outdoor exposure to the limited. But recently, the child has developed fever and no other symptoms. Should they be worried and should they get a COVID test done?
So two things here. The child has a heart disease, so they are at higher risk compared to other normal child. Now the second bit of it is if the child just has developed a fever and the child's oxygen level is good, breathing is normal, activity is normal, then I'll not get worried. But if your child continues to have fever even after 3 days or 4 days, 5 days, yeah, sure. If the fever is very high, just kindly get the COVID screening done only for one reason. If it was a other child, I wouldn't have advised, but your child has underlying heart problem. When there is a COVID infection along with the heart problem, then it can cause more problems later on. More, you need to kind of see whether the oxygen levels are good or not. So we need to closely monitor those children. So I would strongly recommend, if the fever doesn't subside or if the child has any breathing difficulties, you need to come and see us.
Yes, and we are doing the COVID testing in the hospital. So any need be, they can come down, and we'll do it in a safe environment away from the rest of the other patients and kids as well. Dr. Rashmi, a parent here is asking, my son is 7 years old and he stammers at some words whenever he's anxious. This has been happening for many years. If he's relaxed, then his speech is clear. What can be done?
Okay, so stammering is quite a common condition. It's not anything to worry about. So you have rightly said that when he's relaxed, he doesn't stammer. So often what we do is we train these children to think about what they say, because their thought process goes very fast. And when they're about to say, they want to say everything together. That's when they stammer. So they think about what they say, they slow down and they speak. So we do these training sessions. So we do have a speech therapist in our child development center who can do 1 or 2 sessions with your child, and we can teach you how to do it so that we can train him down, and this stammering will not interfere with his life, and he'll be able to manage it very well.
Okay. I would like to take the next question from a parent here. He's asking us whether Rainbow Hospital, the doctors are present physically or present through video call. Sir, and to all the parents, I would like to add that even from the time of the lockdown, we've been open every day, 24/7. Our OPDs are running every day from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. We have all full-time doctors, so they're present here physically. We are also, we make this video consult facility available because we got to know that a lot of parents are anxious about traveling during the COVID or are having difficulty because they moved to their hometowns and they're not able to get in touch with their doctors. So yes, we are available here every day physically, and we're available through video call as well.
And we do video call from hospital, not from home.
Yes. Yes. And next question for Dr. Prakash. Is it safe to travel with kids in a long distance if there is an urgent need? And what precautions should they follow to avoid COVID infection during travel?
So if it is a long distance drive, if you have your private vehicle, it is good enough to travel. And whenever you take a break during travel, don't get into any of the restaurants or where there are a lot of people around. And if it is the same family, you don't need to be worried much because you know that none of you are symptomatic or have any of this COVID infection. So fine, you can travel. There's no problem if it is urgency. But if the place where you're going is what matters. And if you're going there and meeting a lot of people around, it's a big function, marriage or whatever, then you're still, you'll probably escape here in Bangalore, but you might get infection there. So if you are just going to your family house and the people in that house are safe and they don't have any COVID symptoms, then it is fine to travel.
Okay. Thank you, doctor. Dr. Rashmi, a 4.5-year-old son is sucking thumb, and the more he's at home now, the habit has increased, and the parent has tried a lot of things like applying neem oil and strapping his finger and everything else, but he's still not letting go of the habit. What can they do?
Okay. So thumb sucking is usually occurs in children because some children may be anxious. So we'll have to see, maybe because he's in lockdown, he's not able to go out. He might not be able to, meet with other people and all that. So he may be anxious and he may be sucking the thumb. So I would probably say, instead of focusing on the thumb itself, saying don't suck, then you're making him more anxious about it. I'd probably say you distract him and involve him in some activity which involves his hands. Some building Lego or building a thing and all that. And you will find, and when he's doing that activity, he will not be sucking his thumb. So that is how you need to get over it and get over the habit, I'd probably say. Yeah. So you need to find out, one, whether he's anxious about anything, and two is try distraction rather than focusing on the problem.
Okay. And Dr. Rashmi, if you could even take the next question, which is on screen time and TV time. which is increased during the pandemic, plus the online classes are also adding on to the screen time of the child.
Okay, so screen time is a big thing now, because as I said previously also, screen time in less than 2 years old children has caused them to have speech and cognitive delay. So the WHO has very clear guidance on screen time. And if you want to look it up, if you just type WHO and screen time in Google, so you'll come up with the guidance on screen time. So if it is a child who is less than 2 years old, they are not going to have online classes and all that. They should have no screen time. There's no doubt about that. After the age of 2 years, you can have half an hour in a video call, or if they have to talk to somebody or something like that. And only after the age of 5 years, you can have 1 or 2 hours of the screen time. So when you're having online classes with children, it's very important that they take a break. So they're continuously focusing on the screen. So I would probably say every 20 minutes, they'll have to look away into the distance, not just on the screen, into the distance for about 20 seconds. And if possible, when they have a break in the classes, it's better to just walk up and down. Maybe they go up and get their drinks rather than being served on the table or something like that. They just walk up and down. So these sort of things are very important. The second thing is, it's better for children, older children who have the screen time and online classes, they should not have any screen time 1 hour before going to sleep. So that is a very important thing. So there should be no television, computers, videos, mobiles, anything like that 1 hour before going to sleep, because that stimulates the blue light. So that screen time has blue light, and blue light usually stimulates you. So they will not be able to sleep well. And if they don't sleep well, they'll not be able to function well in the morning. So this is something you need to keep in mind with the older children.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Dr. Prakash, a parent has asked about pacifiers. 7-month-old has started using pacifiers. How long can they continue, and what are the drawbacks of using a pacifier?
Well, we don't generally recommend pacifiers. So the answer is straightforward, no pacifiers. And we all know that by giving pacifier, just kind of trying to make the child passive in terms of sucking, but it's not going to add any benefit out of it. So it's going to suck more air rather than helping the child. And since your child is 7 months old, you probably try to get engaged with the child. Most of these children, if you try to get engaged, start talking to the child, sing a song or put a music, they get pacified. So a lot of parents have an assumption that if they pacify the child, they can kind of feel comfortable, and the child feels comfortable, and they can concentrate on their work. That is true, because the child kind of sucks on a pacifier or a dummy and maybe quiet for some time. Some kids are so clever that as soon as that is been satisfied, they kind of just throw out the pacifiers and start screaming again. So it may be short-lived also. The disadvantage is, if the child is put on a pacifier, you don't tend to, or somebody in the house don't tend to get engaged with the child. And there are some babies, as they continue pacifying, they might not stop pacifying even at 2 years, 3 years. And there are few children with prolonged pacifications, with the dummies, probably have some gum issues as well as dentition. So another thing is about the social stigma. And when the child starts going out with the parents, it needs a constant pacifier in their mouth. And it can also lead to infections in case if it is not sterilized well, it falls down and the child picks up and puts it into his mouth. So there are plenty of drawbacks than being useful. So to start with, a child, to put the child on a pacifier itself is a wrong thing to do.
Okay. And Dr. Prakash, I would like you to take the next question as well. Even I should be asking this question probably. It's a 6-year-old kid, child is 14 kgs. Mother wants to know, should we feed a high protein diet, and what else can we do to increase the weight of the child? 6 years and 14 kgs.
Yeah, 6 years, 14 is a child probably is down by 2 to 3 kgs according to the growth chart. Well, if the child is very fussy in eating, we need to evaluate why is the child so fussy in eating. Is there anything else? The common vitamins and minerals, we need to look into it whether the child is getting adequately, because of all this, one of the important minerals is iron. Whether this child has any iron deficiency, we need to look at it, and then probably may have to supplement with iron. Second thing is, what are this this babies might be having erratic food habits and maybe liking and disliking some of the food habits. So we need to kind of have a history to see what are these children up to and what are the parents doing in terms of a proper diet. Now, if you ask whether we can increase protein, carbohydrates, yeah, protein is very important for body building, like especially the muscles require a lot of proteins. So if you, what a lot of parents do say is they don't give much of protein, they might give just carbohydrates. So it's important to have a proper proportion of carbohydrates, proteins, and fat, so in order to have a balanced diet. So we can work on that in terms of nutrition. We also have a nutritional dietitian over here, so we can probably look at the child's height and weight and see on what levels this child has been deficit, have a one quick general examination, and then plan. And if you see a trend that the child is started to gain weight after some proper changes in either in terms of having food and quality of food what we give, then if they don't have any underlying medical conditions why they are not gaining weight, then we are pretty okay with that then.
Okay, thank you, doctor. So we're already overshooting the time, so I'll just take one last question for Dr. Rashmi and Dr. Prakash. Dr. Rashmi, one question for you. Son is 1 year and 10 months old. He is not having any sleep at night. It's very difficult to make him sleep, and he's also not stable. Like, he's very active and always walking everywhere.
Okay. So this is a very common question, and I see a lot of children who have this problem, and sleep problems are very common, and they not only disturb the child, they disturb the parents as well. So what I'd probably say is that let's start off by understanding about sleep. So all of us know about the circadian rhythm, so where you're awake in the day and where you sleep at night. So the circadian rhythm does not develop in children until they are 2.5 years old. So that's first thing to remember. And also we need to have some discipline so that we make sure that we develop this circadian rhythm where you're awake in the day and sleep at night. So for that, it's very important to follow a fixed routine. So a routine is very important, especially for 2 years old. And the routine needs to be followed irrespective of whether it's a holiday, Saturday, Sunday, and all that. And the routine starts from about 3 or 4 o'clock in the evening, where you start off with intense physical exercise. You need to make sure that he runs around a lot at that particular point in time, which makes him very tired. In fact, when there was no lockdown and the parks and all were open, I would probably say, just run around and then get tired. So that is first thing. Routine exercise is very, very important. Then after that, he has his dinner, and then you need to make sure that all the lights in the house are dim from about 7 o'clock in the evening. So all the lights are dim. So it's sending a message that he needs to wind down a bit. And 1 hour before going to sleep, as I mentioned earlier, but anyway, a child less than 2 years old should not have any screen time at all. There should be no screen. And the bedroom should be used only for sleeping and not for anything else. It shouldn't be that you have lots of toys in the bed, lots of things which you can play with and all, which are very distracting for these children. So the bed is associated with sleep and it's used only for sleeping. Have some common thing like a common blanket or something like that, which is used as sleep association, which you can use to it. And you have the timing of the sleep. It needs to be at the same time each night you put him to bed, with a small bedtime story or something like that. Then after that, it's just lights off and you're not going to interfere with him anymore. So this is the routine which you need to follow, and you need to follow this for months together before they actually go off to sleep. So what I normally tell parents is to try and follow this routine for at least 3 weeks. And after that, I have a sleep diary. So we can consult on the phone. We have a sleep diary. We fill in the sleep diary, see where the problems are, and then see what we can do to address them. Yeah, I hope that answers the question. Yeah.
Yes. The final question for Dr. Prakash. A family has recently brought a thermometer. They want to know what is the best way to take temperature. Is it through the armpit or in the mouth?
So what is the age of the child I have mentioned?
3 years old.
3 years. So you can take armpit temperature. That's not a problem. Normal temperature for any child or even for adult is 96.5 to 98.5 degree Fahrenheit. Or if you are thinking of taking the thermometer, if you have other thermometers, that's what I'm telling you is a digital mercury thermometer, or if you have a digital normal thermometer, that's good enough. But if you are using the ear thermometer or the skin, thermometer, just the forehead, then that is also fine, but it might not be accurate due to various reasons. If the child is playing and that room temperature is very warm, and it can give you a degree or 1.5 degree higher in terms of reading. So yeah, that's quite safe to measure the temperature either in the armpit or in the oral cavity. But smaller children, you need to be careful when you put the thermometer in the oral cavity below the tongue, because they can just bite and it can break through. So bigger children can cooperate, and smaller children just under the armpit is good enough.
Okay, thank you, Doctor. Dr. Rashmi, would you like to give some final words before we end the session?
Okay, I hope that we have tried and answered all your questions, but obviously you may have many more, or we might not have covered all of them. If you have any questions, and we would be very happy to help, so you could email us on the address. We are also here for you, and if you need any advice, we are here on video consultation if you need us. As I said before, the pandemic has resulted in all of us finding newer ways of being in touch with each other. So I'm very thankful to Rainbow Hospital and Dr. Girija for organizing this, and I hope that it has helped all of you. Thank you very much.
Dr. Prakash, would you like to add something?
What I would like to say is, thank you for being today. I'm sure, as Rashmi said, that I'm sure there will be a lot of questions we haven't answered. And what I can say is, we at Rainbow, we are at your service, and we are the doctors who would like to help and make sure that your child is taken care in a right way. And so please kindly contact us if there's any questions, doubts. You can email, or you can come on video chats, or if required, we can physically see your child. So at this stage, probably what I would say is, take care of yourself, be healthy, and I wish and hope that this ends soon. So thanks once again for being with us.
Thank you, Dr. Rashmi. Thank you, Dr. Prakash. I would like to just add that we're here for you. During this pandemic, we're here for you. Otherwise, also, we will be available physically, online, to video consults, or we'll even come to your home for vaccinations as well, because I had many parents here asking about delaying vaccination, how safe it is for vaccines and everything. So child growth will go on, and we'll be here as much as possible for it. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and stay home, stay safe, and stay healthy. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.